My fiancé goes out with his friends without wearing his engagement ring. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. Then it happened again and again. And the more I noticed it, the harder it became to pretend I wasn't counting. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 27 years old, and before Adrian, I honestly thought I had already learned every painful lesson love could teach a woman. I had been lied to before, not in small, forgettable ways, in ways that changed where I lived, how I slept, how tightly I held my daughter's hand when we crossed a parking lot. My daughter's father cheated, turned the breakup into a financial war, then disappeared from the everyday responsibility he had fought so loudly to claim. So when Adrian came into my life, I didn't fall quickly. I watched. I waited. I measured his words against his actions. And for a long time, his actions were gentle. He remembered my daughter's school events. He learned how she liked her sandwiches cut. He never tried to replace anyone, never forced closeness, never acted like being good to a child was a performance. He simply showed up, again and again, until my daughter started saving him the last cookie without being asked. That kind of love is dangerous when you've been hurt before, because it makes you want to believe before you feel safe enough to. Adrian was more extroverted than I was. He loved crowded rooms, loud music, last-minute plans, people calling his name from across a sidewalk. I was quieter. I liked early mornings, grocery lists, coffee before conversation, and knowing where my keys were before I left the house. He used to joke that I kept him grounded. I used to tell him he reminded me there was still a world outside survival. So when he went out with his friends, I tried not to make it a problem. He invited me sometimes. Bar crawls, karaoke nights, rooftop birthday parties, loud places where everyone seemed to know everyone. I went when I could, smiled when I meant it, left when the music started feeling like pressure against my skin. But clubs were never my thing. And Adrian knew that. The first time I noticed the ring, he was standing by the mirror, fixing his collar. His engagement ring was on the bathroom counter. I looked at it, then at him. "You're not wearing it?" He glanced down like he had forgotten it was there. "I don't want to lose it." "At dinner?" "It's not just dinner. We might go somewhere after." His voice was casual, too casual. The kind of casual that makes you wonder if you're hearing truth or rehearsal. I told myself it made sense. People lost jewelry. People got careless when drinking. Adrian misplaced his wallet twice a month and once spent 20 minutes looking for sunglasses that were on his head. So I let it go. But then I saw the pattern. He wore the ring to work, to brunch, to the trampoline park with my daughter, even though he was the one jumping higher than the children. He wore it carrying groceries, washing dishes, walking the dog for my elderly neighbor. But every time he went out drinking with his friends, the ring stayed home. One evening, my older sister came over while Adrian was getting ready. She sat at my kitchen island, drinking tea and pretending not to judge my uneven stack of unopened mail. Adrian came out laughing at something on his phone, kissed my cheek, told my daughter he'd see her tomorrow, and headed for the door. My sister's eyes dropped to his hand, then to mine. After the door closed, she waited 3 full seconds before saying, "Where's his ring?" I busied myself with the mugs. "He doesn't wear it when he goes out drinking. He's afraid of losing it." She didn't laugh. That made my stomach tighten. "What?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Claire. Just my name. Soft. Careful. I hated when people said my name like they were about to hand me bad news." "He wears it everywhere else," I said, already defending him before she had accused him of anything. That's what makes it strange. I looked toward the hallway, where my daughter's bedroom door was half open and her nightlight spilled a thin, yellow line across the floor. My sister lowered her voice. "A man who is proud to be engaged doesn't take off the symbol only when women might assume he's single." The words landed too hard. I wanted to reject them. Instead, I remembered every time Adrian had smiled and said, "You're overthinking." I remembered the way he slipped the ring into the little keychain holder, like it was practical, harmless, normal. And I remembered how quickly he could turn his phone away when I came close. That was the other thing, the phone. Not enough to call proof, just enough to poison peace. Sometimes he would sit on the couch, completely absorbed, thumbs moving fast. I'd walk over, and he would swipe away instantly. Not lock the phone, not hide it dramatically. Just shift screens with that smooth, practiced motion that made my chest go cold. "What are you doing?" I asked once. He smiled and showed me a ridiculous video of a raccoon stealing chips from a picnic table. I laughed because it was funny, but I knew that wasn't what had been on his screen. Another time, I came up behind him in bed. He turned the phone face down so quickly that even he seemed surprised by it. "Adrian." What? Why do you keep doing that? Doing what? That. He laughed softly, pulled me close, and kissed my forehead. You're making mystery out of nothing. Maybe I was. That was what scared me most. Betrayal had taught me to notice patterns. Trauma had taught me to see danger even when there was only shadow. So I stood between two terrifying possibilities. Either Adrian was hiding something, or I was slowly punishing a good man for what someone else had done to me, and I didn't know which one would hurt worse. For 2 days after my sister said that, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, packed my daughter's lunch, answered work emails, folded laundry while Adrian sat on the floor helping my daughter build a cardboard castle for one of her school projects. He looked so natural there. That was what made the doubt feel cruel. A bad man was easier to suspect. A careless man was easier to confront. But Adrian was neither. He was patient with my daughter, warm with my family, attentive in all the small ways people usually forgot to fake. So why did something feel wrong? That Friday, he told me he was meeting friends downtown. Just karaoke first, he said. Maybe a bar after. I looked at his hand. The ring was there. Then, before leaving, he walked to the small tray by the door and removed it. My chest tightened before I could stop it. He slipped it into the keychain holder and clipped it beside his car key. I asked, "Does it really feel that loose?" He paused. Not long, but long enough. Sometimes, he said, and if I'm drinking, I don't want to be stupid and lose it. You wear it to the gym. I'm not drunk at the gym. It was a reasonable answer. That was the problem. Every answer sounded reasonable alone, but together they formed a shape I didn't like. I nodded anyway. He came over, kissed me, and smiled. You okay? I wanted to say no. Instead, I said, have fun. He studied me for a second, like he knew there was more under my voice, then left. The door closed, and the apartment became too quiet. My daughter was already asleep, one arm thrown over her stuffed rabbit. I checked on her, adjusted her blanket, and stood there longer than I needed to. Adrian had become part of our home in ways I hadn't fully admitted. His jacket on the chair, his coffee mug in the sink, his favorite cereal beside my daughter's, his laughter in rooms that used to feel too heavy. If he was lying, it wouldn't just break my heart. It would disturb the peace I had built for my child. That thought made me angry, not loud angry, the kind that sits still. Later that night, Adrian texted me a picture from karaoke. His friends were crowded around a table, laughing. His face was bright, open, happy. No ring. I zoomed in before I could stop myself. The second I saw his bare hand, something dipped in my chest. Not proof, not even close. Just that small, ugly feeling of realizing your body has started reacting before your mind can stay reasonable. Around midnight, he came home smelling like cold air, fries, and someone else's cologne from a crowded room. He wasn't drunk, just loose and cheerful. I was sitting on the couch with the TV paused. He smiled. You waited up? I couldn't sleep. He dropped beside me and leaned his head against my shoulder. You should have come. They asked about you. Who did? Everyone. I looked at his hand again. Empty? He noticed. His smile faded a little. Claire. I'm trying not to make this a thing, I said. Then don't. That answer hurt more than I expected. I turned to him. That's not fair. He exhaled. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I mean, I've explained it. I don't want to lose the ring. That's all. And the phone? His expression changed. Just slightly. But I saw it. What phone? The way you turn it away when I come near. He laughed once, but it didn't sound natural. Babe, I'm not hiding my phone. You swipe away from things. Because you walk up suddenly. So what are you doing? He reached for the remote, probably watching something stupid. Then why not just say that? He didn't answer quickly enough. And in that pause, my old life walked back into the room. I remembered sitting across from another man years ago, asking simple questions and getting soft lies. I remembered being told I was insecure, paranoid, dramatic. I remembered apologizing for noticing the truth before I could prove it. Adrian rubbed his face. I don't want to fight, E. I'm not trying to fight. It feels like you've already decided I'm guilty. The words hit me because part of me wondered if he was right. I haven't decided anything, I said quietly. That's why I'm asking. He softened then. His hand reached for mine, and for a second, I almost let the whole thing go. Almost. Then his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, turned the screen down, and my heart sank. He saw me see it. The room went still. He said, It's nothing. I gave a small, tired laugh. That sentence has never helped anyone. He looked guilty. Not guilty like a man caught cheating. Guilty like a man caught hiding. And somehow that was worse, because I didn't know what kind of secret I was standing in front of. That night, we went to bed facing opposite directions. He fell asleep first. I stared at the window, watching city light move across the ceiling, and asked myself a question I was ashamed to even think. Was Adrian protecting our relationship, or protecting the version of himself he showed me? The next morning, he acted normal, too normal. He made pancakes with my daughter, burned the first one, blamed the pan, and made her laugh so hard she snorted orange juice through her nose. I watched from the doorway, smiling on the outside, hurting in a place I couldn't explain. Because love does not disappear the moment doubt arrives. Sometimes love makes doubt sharper. After breakfast, while my daughter was in her room, Adrian came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "I love you," he said. I closed my eyes. "I love you too." And I did. That was the problem. If I didn't love him, I could have walked away from the questions. But I loved him enough to need the truth, even if the truth embarrassed me, broke me, or proved I had been afraid of the wrong thing all along. By Sunday, I had convinced myself I needed to stop spiraling. Then my sister texted me, "You okay?" 3 words, and somehow they reopened everything. I stared at the message while standing in the grocery store checkout line, my daughter asking if she could get cereal shaped like little moons. I bought the cereal. I ignored the text. Then, 10 minutes later, I answered anyway. I don't know. That night, after my daughter fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through old photos of Adrian. Not intentionally searching for evidence. At least that's what I told myself. Photos from birthdays, beach trips, random Tuesday nights where he looked at me like I was the safest place in the world. And then I noticed it. In every photo I had taken of him at home, he wore the ring. But in almost every group picture his friends posted during nights out, nothing. My stomach dropped. It sounds small, maybe, petty, but once your brain notices a pattern, it keeps tracing it like a bruise. I clicked through more photos. Bar rooftop, karaoke booth, birthday dinner, no ring. The comments underneath felt harmless at first. Hot boy summer, single behavior, LOL. Adrian surviving another night out. Then one comment stopped me cold. A girl I didn't know had written, "Still can't believe you're engaged." And Adrian had replied with a laughing emoji. That was it. Nothing flirty, nothing incriminating. But suddenly I couldn't breathe right. Because if people around him were surprised he was engaged, what exactly did they see when he was out without me? When Adrian walked in from the gym later that evening, his ring was back on. Always back on. He smiled when he saw me. "You look exhausted." "I am." He came over and kissed the top of my head, then started unpacking protein bars from a grocery bag. Normal. Everything with him was so painfully normal. That was what made me feel insane. I watched him for a moment before asking, "Do your friends know we're engaged?" He blinked. "What?" "Your friends." "Obviously." Then why did someone comment they couldn't believe it? His shoulders stiffened slightly. "You were reading comments?" There it was. Not anger. Deflection. I folded my arms. "You didn't answer." He sighed, because some of my friends are dramatic idiots. That's not an explanation. They joke about everything. But why would it surprise them? He rubbed the back of his neck. "Claire." "No, why?" He looked frustrated, but not defensive in the way I expected. More like someone exhausted by a conversation he didn't know how to win. "Because I don't post relationship stuff constantly," he said. That's it. I stared at him. Part of me believed him. Another part remembered every hidden screen, every missing ring, every too fast smile. "You think I'm overreacting?" I said quietly. "I think you're scared." The honesty of that answer caught me off guard. He stepped closer. And I get why. I looked away because suddenly I felt embarrassed. Not by him, by myself. "I don't want to become the kind of woman who checks every little thing," I admitted. "You're not." "But I already am." He was quiet for a second. Then he reached for my hand. "Claire, if I wanted to hide you, I wouldn't bring you around my friends." That's not always true. His expression changed. What does that mean? It means people cheat in public all the time now. People normalize weird things. "That's what this is about?" he asked softly. "Relationship horror stories online?" "It's about choices that keep repeating." The second I said it, the room felt tense, because that word mattered. Not one moment, not one coincidence. A repeated choice. Adrian let go of my hand and leaned against the counter. "You know what's frustrating?" he asked. "I feel like no matter what I say, you've already built a version of me in your head." That's not fair. Isn't it? I opened my mouth, then stopped, because I suddenly realized something uncomfortable. I had started observing him instead of experiencing him. Every interaction had become evidence. Every pause had become suspicious. Maybe that was intuition. Or maybe fear had quietly taken over the relationship without asking permission. Adrian looked tired now, not angry, just sad. "I love you," he said. "I love your daughter. I love this life with you. I'm not your ex." That sentence almost broke me, because he wasn't my ex. My ex had been cold when confronted, cruel sometimes. Adrian was patient, careful, which somehow made the uncertainty harder to survive. That night, after he fell asleep beside me, I picked up my phone and stared at our shared location app. His location sat there quietly, transparent, available. A cheating man probably wouldn't willingly share his location, right? Unless transparency in one area made people stop questioning the others. I hated that my brain even worked like this now. The next weekend, Adrian mentioned he was going out again. "Karaoke first," he said while putting on his jacket. "Then maybe downtown after." I nodded and watched him remove the ring. Again. This time, something inside me settled. Not certainty, something colder. Decision. I smiled normally while he talked. I kissed him goodbye normally. I even told him to have fun. Then, after he left, I stood in the quiet apartment staring at the door for almost a full minute. My daughter was staying overnight at my mother's house. For the first time in weeks, the apartment was empty, except for me and my thoughts. And maybe that was dangerous, because silence gives suspicion room to grow. I opened the location app again. Adrian's little blue dot moved slowly across downtown. A comment someone had written online came back to me. "Don't accuse him. Surprise him one night. You'll learn more from his reaction than his explanations." At the time, it had sounded dramatic. Now it sounded reasonable. I grabbed my keys before I could talk myself out of it. And somewhere deep down, beneath all the anxiety and guilt, I realized I wasn't driving there hoping to catch him cheating. I was driving there hoping to finally feel stupid for doubting him. The closer I got to downtown, the more I regretted the idea. Not because it felt wrong exactly, because it felt desperate. The streets were crowded with weekend traffic, glowing signs, groups of people spilling out of bars, laughing too loudly into the night air. I hadn't been out this late in months, and suddenly I felt older than 27. Not physically, emotionally. Like everyone else, still knew how to have fun while I sat in parking lots trying to decide if the man I loved was secretly humiliating me in public. At a red light, I checked his location again. Same place. A karaoke bar with neon lights wrapped around the windows. I parked across the street and sat there gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles tightened. Red and gold streetlights slid across the windshield like warning signs. "You can still leave," I thought. "You can go home right now." But another thought answered immediately. "If nothing is wrong, why are you scared to see it?" So I got out. Music pulsed through the sidewalk before I even reached the entrance. Inside, the place smelled like beer, perfume, fried food, and too many people packed into too little space. I spotted Adrian almost immediately, and my heart dropped so fast it physically hurt. He was standing near the bar, laughing with two women and a guy I didn't recognize. No ring. One of the women touched his shoulder while talking. He leaned close to hear her over the music. Too close. My stomach twisted. I stayed near the entrance, partially hidden behind a group taking selfies, and watched. I know how terrible that sounds. At the time, it didn't feel terrible. It felt necessary. Adrian looked relaxed, comfortable, familiar with this louder version of himself in a way I rarely saw at home. He greeted people constantly. Hugs, handshakes, quick conversations. His energy seemed bigger here. A brunette wrapped her arms around him dramatically when she arrived. He laughed and hugged her back. Heat rushed into my face. Then another guy walked over and pulled Adrian into some ridiculous dance move that made the whole group burst out laughing. The woman beside me muttered, "Drunk idiots," and moved away. I kept watching. Because once you start searching for proof, stopping feels impossible. A slow song ended. The music shifted into something louder. The crowd screamed excitedly, and Adrian's friends rushed toward the open dance area. A girl started dancing dramatically beside one of her friends while everyone laughed. Then, at one point, a guy jokingly turned around and twerked against Adrian in an exaggerated way. Adrian threw his head back laughing and pretended to dramatically push him away. The group nearly collapsed. And suddenly my emotions became confusing, because nothing I was seeing looked romantic. Wild? Yes. Embarrassing? A little. But secretive? Not really. Still, the ring absence sat heavily in my chest. Then Adrian hugged another woman hello, and the small laugh I had almost allowed myself disappeared. She was beautiful, tall, dark hair, tight black dress, effortless confidence. She said something into his ear. He smiled. Too warmly. My throat tightened. She touched his arm while talking. And then, "Claire," I froze. One of Adrian's friends was staring at me in confusion from 3 feet away. Panic shot through me. I recognized him vaguely from another party months ago. He blinked. Oh my God, Claire? Adrian turned instantly. The second his eyes landed on me, every horrible scenario I had imagined rushed into my head at once. Shock. Fear. Guilt. I waited for it. Instead, Adrian's entire face lit up. Claire! Before I could react, he crossed the room quickly and wrapped his arms around me so hard I almost lost balance. You came? His voice sounded genuinely excited. Not nervous. Not caught. Excited. I stood there stunned while he kissed my forehead and laughed. Why didn't you text me? I wanted to surprise you. Well, mission accomplished. The people around him started reacting immediately. Oh, this is Claire? The famous fiancé. Finally! A woman smiled at me warmly and said, We've heard so much about you. I blinked. Another guy pointed dramatically at Adrian. Bro, talks about you constantly. Adrian groaned. Okay, relax. Everyone laughed. And just like that, the version of events I had spent weeks building inside my head started cracking. Not completely, but enough to make me feel dizzy. The beautiful brunette I had panicked over walked over and hugged me casually. I'm Mia, she said. Thank God you came. He's unbearable when he drinks tequila. The relief should have been instant. Instead, it arrived mixed with shame. My face stayed calm, but inside, I felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know I had been suffocating in. Adrian kept his hand around my waist the entire time after that. Not subtly, not cautiously, openly, proudly. He introduced me to everyone. My fiancé, my girl, Claire, the woman who tolerates me somehow. At one point, one of the guys joked, We honestly thought she was imaginary for a while. Adrian rolled his eyes. That's because none of you answered texts. The exchange felt painfully normal, and the more normal it felt, the more embarrassed I became about secretly investigating him. Still, one question remained. The phone. Because twice that night, I noticed Adrian quickly angle the screen away when someone walked near him. Not just me. Anyone. And once I noticed that, the uneasy feeling returned. Around 1 a.m, the group finally started breaking apart. Everyone was drunk, except me and Adrian. One girl nearly dropped fries onto her own shoes. Another forgot where she parked. Adrian laughed so hard helping his friends into ride shares that tears formed in his eyes. Through all of it, he stayed close to me, touching my back, checking if I was cold, kissing my temple while talking to people. Nothing about his behavior suggested a man hiding a second life, which should have comforted me completely. Instead, it left me with a different kind of fear. If he wasn't cheating, then what exactly had I been sensing all this time? On the drive home, Adrian held my hand over the center console. You really surprised me tonight, he said softly. Was that okay? Okay, Claire, I loved it. Streetlights moved across his face in gold flashes. He looked happy, comfortable, safe, and guilt settled heavily into my stomach. Maybe I had dragged old wounds into a relationship that didn't deserve them. Maybe my fear had started inventing stories where none existed. Then Adrian's phone buzzed in the cup holder. He glanced down quickly, flipped it face down. Again, my heart dropped. And this time I couldn't ignore it. The ride home became quiet after that. Not angry quiet, careful quiet. The kind where both people can feel something sitting between them, but neither knows how to touch it without making it worse. Adrian kept one hand on the wheel and the other loosely resting near mine. I stared out the window. City lights blurred across the glass while my thoughts turned against me again. Because the night should have reassured me. His friends knew who I was. The women there knew who I was. Nobody acted surprised by my existence. Nobody looked guilty when I appeared. If anything, Adrian had looked happier after I arrived. So why couldn't I relax? I hated the answer. Because the phone thing still didn't make sense. When we finally got home, Adrian unlocked the apartment quietly. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light I had left on earlier, soft and warm against the counters. Adrian tossed his keys down and loosened his jacket. I need water before I die. I smiled faintly despite myself. He grabbed 2 glasses and handed me one automatically, like muscle memory. That hurt too. The tenderness. The normalcy. Sometimes love makes suspicion feel monstrous. He leaned against the counter drinking water while I watched him. He caught the look immediately. What? I took a breath. Now or never. You still hide your phone. The words landed softly between us. Adrian lowered the glass. For a second, he looked genuinely confused, then tired. Claire. No, tonight was good. Better than good. But you still did it. Did what? You turned your screen away. His face changed. Not panic. Not guilt. Something stranger. Almost embarrassment. You noticed that? Yes. He rubbed the back of his neck and let out a short laugh under his breath. And suddenly I got irritated, because I had spent weeks emotionally unraveling, and he was laughing. What's funny? Nothing. You keep saying that, because it is nothing. Then stop acting like it's classified information. He looked away. That tiny hesitation reignited every fear instantly. Adrian. He sighed and leaned his head back. Oh my God. What? You're really serious. Yes, I am. Another silence. Then Adrian started smiling. Not mocking. Nervous. Like someone trying not to laugh during the wrong moment. What? I snapped. He looked at me carefully. If I tell you, can you promise not to make fun of me? I blinked. That was not the direction I expected. What? I'm serious. Adrian, I literally thought you were cheating. His eyes widened. What? You heard me. Claire! Now he looked horrified. Actually horrified. He set the glass down too hard on the counter. You thought I was cheating because of my phone? And the ring. The ring thing again? Yes, the ring thing again. He looked like he wanted to defend himself, stopped, then laughed once in disbelief. I cannot believe this. Neither can I. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then Adrian covered his face with one hand and started laughing. Not cruelly, not dismissively. The kind of helpless laugh people make when they realize a misunderstanding has spiraled completely out of control. I stood there annoyed while he tried to recover. This isn't funny. It kind of is. It absolutely is not. He dropped his hand finally, still smiling. Claire, I swear to God, I'm not cheating on you. Then what are you hiding? He groaned softly, reached into his pocket, unlocked his phone, and held it out. Fine, here. I looked down cautiously. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then realization hit. Animated characters. Dialogue boxes. Choices. A ridiculously handsome vampire in a leather jacket stared back at me from the screen. I stared at the screen, then at Adrian, then back at the screen. What is this? His ears turned red. I knew it. Oh my God, I whispered. It's not what it looks like. It looks exactly like what it looks like. Adrian looked deeply offended. There's plot. I blinked at him. You're hiding a romance story game? It's not just romance. I laughed once in pure disbelief. Weeks. I had spent weeks emotionally preparing myself for betrayal. Meanwhile, this man had been secretly playing interactive fantasy drama stories on his phone like a teenager hiding snacks under a pillow. Adrian looked mortified. You cannot tell anyone. I covered my mouth, trying not to laugh harder. Claire, you were acting like you had government secrets. Because every time you walked up, it was during an embarrassing scene. I nearly doubled over laughing. He pointed accusingly at me. This reaction is exactly why I hid it. Oh my God. He snatched the phone back dramatically. You don't understand. There are choices. That somehow makes it worse. It does not. I laughed so hard tears formed in my eyes. And suddenly, after weeks of tension, the emotional weight inside me cracked apart. Relief, humiliation, love, embarrassment, all tangled together. Adrian finally sighed and leaned against the counter again, calmer now. I didn't want you judging me. I thought you were having an affair. With who? A cartoon billionaire? I laughed again. Then slowly, the humor faded enough for honesty to settle in. Adrian looked down at his phone before speaking quietly. I know you've been through a lot before me. That sentence softened everything. He continued carefully. Sometimes I feel like you see me as more mature than I actually am. I frowned. What do you mean? You've lived through real stuff, Claire. Raising a kid, court issues, your ex. You had to grow up fast. He gave a small shrug. Meanwhile, I still get excited about karaoke and stupid games and themed bars. That's not a bad thing. Maybe not, but sometimes I feel immature compared to you. I stared at him in surprise, because I had spent weeks assuming secrecy meant distance. But his secrecy had come from insecurity. Adrian laughed softly at himself. I know it sounds stupid. It sounds human. His expression shifted, gentler, more vulnerable. I wasn't hiding another woman, he said quietly. I was hiding the fact that I spent $30 helping a fake vampire king choose between love and revenge. I burst out laughing again despite myself. He smiled finally, relieved that I was smiling too. Then he stepped closer, wrapped his arms around my waist, and rested his forehead against mine. You really thought I was cheating? I hesitated. A little. A little? Okay, a medium amount. He groaned dramatically. Claire, I'm sorry. And I meant it. Not because my fears came from nowhere, but because fear had started rewriting reality before I gave him the chance to explain it. Adrian kissed my forehead softly. I need you to ask me things before you build entire crime documentaries in your head. I laughed quietly against his chest. Fair. Then he added, "And for the record, I really am scared of losing the ring." I pulled back slightly. Seriously? Claire, I lose everything. That part, unfortunately, was true. The strange thing about relief is that it doesn't arrive all at once. You expect some dramatic release, some movie moment where the tension disappears instantly and everything feels clean again. But real relief comes in layers. First came the laughter, then the embarrassment. Then, sometime around 2 in the morning, while Adrian searched the kitchen for leftover fries he swore existed, came the realization that I had almost damaged something good because I was too afraid to feel foolish. I sat on the counter, watching him open cabinets dramatically. "You already checked that one." "I'm checking again." "You're impossible." "You love me." Unfortunately, that was true too. Eventually, he found the fries in the air fryer, looked personally betrayed by their existence, and started eating them cold. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "What? You really had me thinking you were hiding another woman." Adrian pointed a fry at me. Meanwhile, I was hiding fictional emotional trauma. "That vampire looked toxic." "He had depth." "I'm sure he did." He narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "You're judging me again." "I absolutely am." He walked over, stole a quick kiss, and smiled against my mouth. "Still marrying me?" I pretended to think about it. "Maybe." Rude. But underneath the teasing, something important had shifted between us. Not because the misunderstanding happened, but because we finally talked honestly about why it happened. The next morning, my daughter came home from my mother's house carrying too many snacks and immediately demanded pancakes. Adrian accepted the assignment like it was a military mission. I watched him from the kitchen doorway while he stood at the stove in sweatpants, flipping pancakes badly on purpose to make her laugh. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't analyzing him. I was just seeing him again. And honestly, that felt bigger than relief. Later that afternoon, while my daughter colored at the coffee table, Adrian sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through his phone openly. Very openly. Almost aggressively openly. I laughed. "Okay, now you're overcorrecting." He tilted the screen toward me dramatically. "Look, the Vampire King is apologizing." "I don't care." "You should. Character development matters." I rolled my eyes while smiling. Then Adrian's expression softened. "You know something?" "What?" "I didn't realize the ring thing bothered you that much." That pulled me back into seriousness. I tried to tell myself it didn't. But it did. "Yeah." He nodded slowly. I should have listened better instead of brushing it off. The sincerity in his voice mattered more than the apology itself. Because reassurance is not just denying wrongdoing. It is caring about the fear, even when you think the fear is irrational. I tucked one leg under myself on the couch. I don't want to become paranoid. "You're not paranoid. I secretly watched you across a karaoke bar." That part was a little insane. I laughed despite myself. "Thank you. But also," he shrugged lightly, "your ex messed with your trust pretty badly." I looked down quietly. The room softened around us, my daughter humming while coloring, the dishwasher running, Sunday light spilling through the windows. Normal life. Fragile life. The kind people accidentally destroy when they stop telling the truth. "I hate that part of my past followed me into this relationship," I admitted quietly. Adrian reached over and took my hand. "I'd rather you ask difficult questions than suffer quietly beside me." That sentence stayed with me, because my last relationship had trained me to believe asking questions made me difficult. Too emotional, too suspicious, too much. But healthy love does not punish curiosity. It answers it. A few days later, my sister came over again. This time, Adrian was home. He greeted her cheerfully while carrying grocery bags inside. She glanced immediately at his hand. The ring was there. After he disappeared into the kitchen, she looked at me carefully. "So?" I tried not to smile. "You were wrong." Her eyebrows lifted. "Really?" "He's not cheating." "What was the phone thing?" I buried my face briefly in embarrassment. "Oh no," she said immediately. "It's embarrassing, isn't it? You have no idea." After I explained, she stared at me for 3 full seconds before bursting into laughter so loud, Adrian yelled from the kitchen, "I can still hear you." My sister wiped tears from her eyes. "Claire, you thought this man had a secret second life and he was just playing fairy vampire romance stories?" "There were choices involved." "That somehow makes it funnier." Adrian walked back into the room carrying drinks and narrowed his eyes. "I don't like this energy." "It's too late," my sister said. "You're family lore now." He looked genuinely offended. "Claire promised not to tell people." "I promised not to tell everyone." "That is not the same thing." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. And for the first time in weeks, the apartment felt light again. Not perfect. Real. Which mattered more. A month later, Adrian came home holding a tiny jewelry box. I frowned. What's that? He handed it to me. Inside was a simple silicone ring. Cheap, flexible, impossible to lose easily. I figured this solves the drinking problem, he said casually. Something in my chest softened, because that was the real resolution. Not proving innocence. Effort, listening, adjustment, love choosing peace over ego. I looked up at him. You bought a backup engagement ring? He shrugged. I'm committed to surviving your investigations. I laughed quietly before kissing him. And later that night, while Adrian sat beside me, openly playing his ridiculous story game, I realized something important. Trust is not the absence of fear. It is what two people build after fear enters the room and both still choose honesty. And sometimes the terrifying secret destroying your peace is not betrayal. Sometimes it is just a grown man, mildly embarrassed, secretly obsessed with fictional vampire drama.